You're now watching Sports Bettor's Paradise on the Bet Rivers Network.
All right, Jimmy Ott and Paul Stone here with our best bets of the week. We do it 3 times a week. We do the Michigan teams, we do the high-profile games, and our best bets coming down the stretch, the second to last week of the regular season for college football. Let's start off in the Big 12 and go to Morgantown, West Virginia, to the 5-5 Mountaineers at home hosting Central Florida, 4-6. I know we talked about Central Florida a little bit preseason, probably a bit of a disappointing season to be 4-6 at this point. They are a road favorite in Morgantown, 3-63.5. West Virginia lost 49-35 to Baylor last Saturday. That was a shootout. About 500 yards apiece for both Baylor and West Virginia, but one turnover for the Mountaineers and 3 failed fourth downs. So just could not keep up, as they had to go for it to try and keep up with the scoring for the Baylor Bears. So here we go as, again, Mountaineers catching points at home.
Yeah, I'll tell you, as we record here on Thursday morning, the 21st of November, West Virginia, there's news starting to swirl that Neil Brown, there are plans to perhaps replace Neil Brown with current UNLV coach Barry Odom. Barry Odom worked with Ren Baker, the current West Virginia athletic director, when both were with Missouri a few years ago. So there is a connection there. But West Virginia is my story, and I'm sticking to it, Jimmy. So we'll see how that all pans out. You know, we often hear guys talk about wrong side favorites, but I think that term is overused. You know, I think perhaps these people don't use or understand power ratings, strength of schedule, and other factors that go into engineering a point spread. So at the risk of sounding like one of those guys, I'm going to say here that I think UCF is a wrong side favorite. I actually made West Virginia minus 2.5 in this game. Some books opened this game at pick on Sunday, so money has shown on Central Florida. The Knights, as we indicated, now a 3-point favorite at Bet Rivers. I like West Virginia for several reasons. First of all, this is a Central Florida team that started out 3-0, very promising season appeared to be in store for them, but they've lost 6 of their last 7 games. The Knights are on their 3rd quarterback, which is usually not a good thing. And the weather, it might not be to Central Florida's liking. Saturday's forecast currently calls for a high of only 46 degrees, winds possibly up to 15 miles per hour, and a 60% chance of rain. So not exactly sunny Florida. Also, Central Florida, they have not thrived in the role of road favorite in recent years. They are 7-15 against the spread as a road favorite since the start of 2015. West Virginia, they've lost their last 3 home games. They certainly don't want to finish the season with 4 straight losses at home. They need a victory here to get bowl eligible. And perhaps as important as anything, their quarterback Garrett Green, who's been plagued by injuries in recent weeks, he's getting close to full health, played really well last week in the loss. So it's good to have Green back from West Virginia's standpoint here. I like West Virginia plus 3 over UCF in the Big 12.
What's wrong, Paul? So it sounds so good walking around the sports book. Got the wrong team favored here, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, you do hear that from time to time, no question. Hey, don't forget our Bet Rivers. You can earn a chance at $10,000 in bonus money with Bet Rivers prop packs. Place NBA same-game parlays to collect player card prop packs and earn rewards. You win based on how your player performs. Log into the Bet Rivers, betrivers.com or the Bet Rivers app to place your bet and get your pack. The prop packs at Bet Rivers. Let's go to the Big Ten and a big one in a couple of games look like this week where teams that are projected right now to be in the college football playoff are really close as long as they win out. So we'll get to one of those is Penn State. Well, Penn State would have made, if they had a 12-team playoff the last 10 years, they'd have made it 6 out of 10. It's almost like this was designed by James Franklin. So Penn State at 9-1 goes into Minneapolis-St. Paul to take on the Gophers. They're laying 11. The total is 45. Tricky spot here for Penn State because I just wonder how much distractions, how much they're looking at those rankings too much. Look at Penn State, a couple of their best wins at USC, Illinois, Minnesota beat them both. So they certainly were they seem to be competitive with the best wins I know they have a better loss with Ohio State, but Minnesota also had a 4-game win streak. It really caught my attention when they were favored at Illinois, and they won and covered that game. Got slipped up in Piscataway against Rutgers last time out, but now they're coming off of a bye, rowing the boat, 6-4 here, plus 11 at home. I'm all over this home dog today against possibly the distracted Penn State Nittany Lions here. I expect a closer game. Maybe Penn State will win, but I think they'll be in a battle with Minnesota coming off of a bye, which is very advantageous this late in the season, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these late season buys, they give those teams an opportunity not only to heal some of those bumps and bruises, the physical elements, but to get kind of an emotional reset, a mental reset. So I think that's a big advantage here. And I have not played Minnesota yet, but I have been looking very strongly at the Gophers. As kind of a side note, people down here in Texas have talked about this week Steve Sarkisian in Texas's last 2 games in the opponent's territory towards the end of the game, electing to kneel against both Florida and Arkansas, kind of wondering if that's the right thing to do, considering their goal to make the playoff. James Franklin's not going to kneel. He'll get the points. That's the one thing that kind of scares me about this game is that James scores whenever he can score, and he's cognizant of that point spread. But for me, it's Minnesota or nothing. I think this shapes up nicely for a Minnesota team that is rowing the boat again in the right direction. So I'll probably get on the Gophers here at some point. I just have to get over my fear of Franklin, I guess.
Paul, but to that point, I mean, they are in and they are safely in right now. I mean, hosting a first-round game in the playoffs. If he is presented with that situation, that doesn't affect things at all? Because it seemed like he was trying to almost win his fan base over to try and some of those boosters are going to have some money on the game as well. But I don't know if those ancillary, just win and kind of, I don't know. I wonder if it's tested in this spot, being a little bit different.
As far as Franklin, maybe
being up 7, they could take a knee, or they can run the ball in, or risk a fumble when they are safely in the playoffs right now, as opposed to trying to cover the spread, as he has done a million times in the past.
I think the prudent thing would be, and the smart thing would be, to not risk it and to take the knee because you've got the automatic victory. But with history as our guide, he just seems to be. I think anything he can get, to build up his, to create equity in the bank, even game by game, to get those backers the money, because it's a real part of the sport. I mean, you can't turn on the television without hearing networks that maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, wouldn't have said a word about sports betting. Now that's all you see. You're just inundated with that, and he clearly pays attention to it. So I don't know if it's off the table, even in this situation, when it would be, to me and you, probably more prudent to just take a knee, take the victory, get out, and start thinking about being one of those 12 teams.
We'll keep an eye on that because this new playoff, and he is projected to be in the playoff for the first time. So that is different from this equation. But yes, those boosters are still laying at 11 this weekend. So we'll take a close eye on that if it does, the situation arises. Players can play same-game parlays in college football and NFL games to earn squares at BetRivers. Our exclusive Squares game offers additional chances at profit boost, bonus bets, and many $10,000 jackpots. Visit BetRivers.com with the BetRivers app for more details. Let's get to your next pick, Paul. Go to the SEC. Told you these Texas Longhorns. It was a gift-wrapped an invitation to the playoff. People talking about that schedule a little bit now, and boy, here we come in. Kentucky is 1-6 in the SEC. 1 loss away from going 1-7. How about their only win in Oxford, Mississippi against the Ole Miss Rebels? Texas at home, 9-1 and safely in the playoff as well. That game at Texas A&M, I was looking on the secondary market for those ticket prices. Wow, that is some expensive tickets. I mean, you got $1,500 up in the nosebleed in Kyle Field for that one. Kentucky again, Texas again, 9-1, 20.5 at BetRivers. The total is 47.5 over the 4-6 Kentucky Wildcats.
I tell you, here in my home state of Texas, Jimmy, ever since it was announced just over 3 years ago that Texas and Oklahoma would be going to the SEC, here in the state of Texas, everybody's been talking about the game. and the game is Texas and Texas A&M renewing their rivalry for the first time since 2011. But that game's next week. And first things first, the Longhorns have to face pesky Kentucky in Austin this Saturday, as you mentioned, as almost 3-touchdown favorites. And although Kentucky 1-6 in the 15th slot in the 16-team SEC, they have had their moments, and they have been at their best against the better teams on their schedule. They've played 3 top 7 teams that were ranked in the top 7 at the time of the game, and they've covered against all 3. Texas will be the 4th. In fact, they played in week 3. As we know, they were 22.5-point home underdogs to Georgia, then ranked number 1. Lost that game by a single point, 13-12, after leading at halftime. And then 2 weeks later, you mentioned when they traveled to Oxford, Mississippi to play Ole Miss, then ranked number 6. They were getting 15 in that game, and of course won outright 20-17. And then almost 3 weeks ago, Kentucky led 7th-ranked Tennessee at the half. Ultimately lost that game 28-18. They were 17.5-point underdogs on the road. So 3-0 against the spread is Kentucky against 3 top 7 teams that they face so far. So I'm not saying Texas is overlooking Kentucky, that they're treating them as an afterthought, but these young men are human beings, and it's part of the human condition to look ahead, to look forward, to think of what is possible and what might be. I think Texas has one eye towards College Station. Their offense hadn't been off the charts the last few weeks. I like Kentucky plus 20.5 over Texas.
The style of play that Stoops coaches as well, as far as protecting the ball, field position, that lends itself to lower scoring. This is his worst team in quite some time. He has brought a level of respectability to Lexington that we just haven't seen. Clearly, number 2 on campus behind the big blue basketball. But, man, there's no doubt if there's ever a look-ahead spot, 1-6 Kentucky coming in with A&M on the road. Major look-ahead spot, a little situational handicapping for Paul Stone. Let's move on to my next pick, and let's go to another one of those teams. If they win out, they control their own destiny to get into the college football playoff against a capable team on the road. And how much were they a little bit distracted last week? We were talking about the SMU Mustangs, and what a great story they are. I mean, they really did not to forfeit the television rights that the rest of the ACC members get to get into a Power 4 conference. Man, you win, and they got some powerful alums that are going to back it now. They finally have something to back instead of a sleepy little, Hawaii Bowl every now and then and something like that. They're 9-1, but, man, last week against Boston College, playing the backup quarterback, or they made the quarterback switch, did Boston College. Don't be fooled by that 38-28 final. They scored on 4th down with 13 seconds to go to make that look a lot more comfortable than it was. That was a very tight game in Dallas last week. Talk about Tony Elliott. I mean, absolute tragedy with the kids that being murdered right there on a field trip. And it's a tough one right here from the South Louisiana area. But, man, he has brought a level of respectability to that program as well. They beat Pitt up in Pittsburgh. They were competitive with Louisville. And in the first half, they were competitive at Clemson for a little bit as well. So they've shown some signs that they are improved. Plus 9.5. You talk about look-ahead spots. You talk about being a little bit preoccupied. And just a little bit of that. We saw it with Iowa State. We saw it with BYU. As some of these teams not used to being in this spot with everybody's talking about at the playoff. I'll go with the Wahoos, the Cavaliers at home, plus a 9.5, Paul.
Yeah, first of all, you made the point about SMU's ability to fundraise, the big boosters that they have. I mean, this is a relatively small private school. They've got an enrollment of 11,000 people, so they're not cranking out, 50,000 students a year like the University of Texas and Texas A&M and other large schools. But they do have some pop, and they basically, I don't know that there's any other way to put it. They bought their way into the ACC, and now they're, gave up that television money for 11 years, I think. and now they're maybe making some hay in their very first year. But I'm like you. I mean, SMU, they were extremely fortunate to win their last road game at Duke. Had the turnover problems there. Escaped 28-27 in Durham. And then earlier this year, this was before the quarterback switch from Preston Stone to Kevin Jennings. But in their opener, they struggled at Nevada as well. So as good as SMU is, like most teams, they're not probably quite the same team on the road. And Virginia, this is just a team. I don't know that they get everybody's best punch when you're looking at the schedule and you're saying, this is really going to be a big game. We're going to really get ready for this one, and all the fans will be excited, so forth and so on. Virginia maybe right now is just a little bit below that, so they maybe catch teams napping a little bit. And there probably is not a better team. Might be one or two, but not many with this large of a sample size. Since 2014, as an underdog, Virginia 47-28 against the spread as an underdog, 63%. That's a pretty good trend there, just to play blindly week in and week out. And like you, I think Virginia is going to keep this one within single digits against SMU.
All right, let's go to some of the smaller conferences and look at this. And we previewed this conference back in the before the season started. And Arkansas State in year 4 under Butch Jones, it was supposed to make a little bit of pop. They had a returning freshman quarterback, dual threat Jalen Rayner, who was very, very good, and something to build around. And not a whole lot of people follow the recruiting rankings of this one, but Arkansas State kind of quietly put together some of the stronger recruiting classes in this country. They're 6-4 right now. On the other hand, rebuild in a big way for UL Monroe, one of the toughest jobs in all of college football. They start out 5-1 under first-year coach Brian Vincent, and hey man, this is all the great coaching jobs. I know it's a smaller level, but this is one of the more unexpected, easily going over their win total for the season in that first half of the season. But hitting a little bit of a wall as the competition has stiffened a little bit. They've lost their last 4 in a row after starting 5-5. This line has bounced all over the place, but the Red Wolves here at home laying less than a field goal right now. Bet Rivers 2.5 and 52.5 looks tempting, Paul.
Yeah, this is another game, Jimmy, where the money has shown heavily on one side, but we're going to go with the other. This game opened at some books on Sunday. Arkansas State -7 over Louisiana Monroe, but as you mentioned, that number has shifted downward dramatically. Arkansas State now only -2.5 at Bet Rivers, and even -2 at some books. So really the money has flown in on Louisiana Monroe. The current number infers that Louisiana Monroe would be favored on a neutral field. And I don't just see that. I don't see that at all. My numbers show that Arkansas State has a slightly higher power rating. I made Arkansas State -5 in this game, so crossing over the key numbers of 3 and 4 according to my power ratings. This ULM team, like you said, it's a very difficult job. Terry Bowden gave it 3 years, couldn't get it done. Coming into this year, the Warhawks had only won 10 games, a total of 10 games in the previous 4 years. So a really tough gig there in Monroe. But Bryant Vincent's come in, done a great job, got off to the great start. Now at 5-5, they need one more victory to reach bowl eligibility. But one reason I like Arkansas State is the travel component. Although not cross-country travel like you're seeing in the Atlantic Coast Conference and perhaps the Big Ten, ULM, they're playing their 4th road game in the last 5 weeks. So getting on a plane and traveling each week, that certainly adds up. Arkansas State's been very good at home. They're a perfect 4-0 at home so far this season. They've also had the Red Wolves. They've been very, very effective running the ball the last 4 weeks. They've averaged over the last 4 weeks 234 yards rushing a game. So I like that. I believe we're getting Arkansas State on the cheap. Give me Arkansas State -2.5 over Louisiana Monroe in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, back in their 1AA days, their powerhouse 1AA days, where they won the national championship and lost to Marshall in back-to-back years in the finals. Stan Humphries, who's quarterback the San Diego Chargers to a Super Bowl, and my favorite running back named Roosevelt Potts, who played with the Indianapolis Colts back in the day. Those guys are gone. But what a job Brian Vincent has done in his first year up in Monroe. Let's go out to Los Angeles. That's right, and nothing says Big Ten like USC and UCLA. So not much of a home field advantage, but it is being played at the Rose Bowl. I thought this number was going to be 3 and maybe slightly under. It may have been, but UCLA went to Seattle last Friday night, lost and failed to cover. No crime there. Both of these teams lost in Seattle against the Huskies. And then USC, who got behind early with a pick 6 that Maeva threw, they did rally and barely covered. I did have USC minus the 7. I thought they were fortunate to cover with just under 3 minutes left. They get a touchdown to extend the lead from 1 until 8. But I think this line at 4.5 is a little bit generous here at 51.5. Boy, you talk about two programs and different approaches to their hires, huh? I mean, Lincoln Riley outbidding LSU. I mean, USC for Lincoln Riley. I mean, giving him the private plane, the housing allowance. I mean, the whole shebang. And as UCLA, who Chip Kelly said, tired of all this transfer portal, this recruiting. The recruiting process is 365. I'm out. I'm going to coach offensive football up in Columbus, Ohio for Ohio State. And Deshaun Foster, who is flat out stage struck, had a little stage fright in the Big Ten media days, but has done quietly a pretty damn good job. UCLA 4-6, USC 5-5. The records, comparable there, but I'm going to take the Bruins on their home turf in the Rose Bowl. I think this is a 50-50 type of game. I like that it went over 3. I'm going to take them plus a 4.5 ball.
Yeah, I tell you, before I get started on my comments on this game, I used to be a sports writer back in the day as a younger man. One of the guys I worked with was a guy named Cedric Golden, who now is a columnist for the Austin American Statesman, primarily covers the Longhorns. But Cedric always used to say, what was he thinking? And that comes to mind when I think about the UCLA SID. He needs to prepare Deshaun Foster for Big Ten media days in Indianapolis and tell him what to expect. Have an opening statement, coach. You're going to take some questions. Prep the guy. I mean, don't just throw him out there to the wolves. But since that awkward beginning in Indianapolis in July, I think Deshaun Foster's done a pretty good job if you look at the on-the-field results, especially the last 8 games. If you're a betting man like we are, the Bruins 6-1-1 against the spread their last 8. USC's not been good on the road, to put it mildly. They've had 4 true road games, been favored in all 4, not only failed to cover all 4, but if my math's correct, they've lost all 4. So UCLA getting 4.5 here. USC clearly, I think clearly has the better roster. They've got better personnel. But I think UCLA just maybe coached up a little bit more. I think this means more to them. They're kind of the little brother in the big city of Los Angeles when it comes to college football. So I like your position there. I have bet UCLA, not one of my bigger plays, but I do like the Bruins to keep it close here or perhaps even pull out the victory.
I mean, going into that game where they failed to cover and lost against Seattle, they covered against LSU, Oregon, Penn State, depending on what number you had, huh, Paul? That Minnesota game, it either fell on the number or you may have won, I believe, won a game outright at Rutgers, won outright at Nebraska, beat Iowa as a dog as well. So they have been a covering machine until that point. So covering seven straight along the way. So, and man, nobody has logged more miles than the UCLA Bruins with trips to Baton Rouge, Happy Valley, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Piscataway, New Jersey, Lincoln, Nebraska, and Hawaii. I mean, they have had quite a travel schedule. So back home, they'll appreciate a little fresh legs for Deshaun Foster's Bruins in the Battle of L.A. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott. We do each and every week 3 different times on the Sports Bettor's Paradise talking college football on the Bet Rivers Network.